To lose the weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. Welcome into this edition of Just the Truth. Glad you're joining me in the PhD Weight Loss Nutrition Studio. During an exclusive interview with Jonathan Capehart, President Joe Biden says he regrets using the term illegal when referring to the alleged killer of Laken Riley during his State of the Union speech last week. He said, "I shouldn't have used illegal. It's undocumented." In the New York Post yesterday, Miranda Divine challenges Biden on his apology in an excellently written column. I'll share that with you in just a moment. New information has been released. The January 6th Congressional Committee allegedly falsely claimed it did not have evidence that showed former President Trump's administration requested National Guard assistance, according to a report detailing a, quote, hidden transcript that was recently released. Representative Nancy Mace, a Republican from the 1st Congressional District of South Carolina, accused ABC's George Stephanopoulos of trying to shame her for endorsing former President Trump in a contentious interview yesterday. You're going to want to hear this. And black New Yorkers have conflicting ideas over who deserves reparations, as a commission in the state of New York will soon begin to discuss the issue and just how much and to whom those payments are paid. You can join the conversations today on the Furman Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Call, leave a quick voice message. Emails are always welcome, joey@joeyhudson.com.
I told you we'd be back.
And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free.
It's Joey Hudson.
On our guest line this morning, Senator Tim Scott.
Thank you for listening to one of the best radio shows. Joey, God bless your leadership.
Joey, congratulations on your new show.
I just wanted to let you know that I always appreciate your perspective and your common sense approach to the issues.
You know what? If people like you keep telling us the truth, believe me, we're paying close attention.
Let your voice be heard.
And the truth shall set you free.
Here's Joey Hudson.
Let's start today's edition of Just the Truth with an opinion piece written by Miranda Divine in the New York Post yesterday. Now, you're probably aware by now the latest Biden debacle, this time stemming from his State of the Union speech last week, butchering the name of the young Georgia student, Laken Riley, who was murdered by an illegal. Biden only mentioned her name apparently after Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene called the president out during his speech. Biden then mispronounced Miss Riley's name, calling her Laken Riley, and referred to the killer as an illegal, which he is. But now Biden has apologized after getting heat from his own party and claims he should not have used a description of illegal, but that the killer is an undocumented immigrant. Ms. Divine's column is titled, "Joe Biden's as callous as it gets when it comes to Laken Riley." She writes, as if it weren't bad enough that Joe Biden had to be heckled into mentioning Laken Riley's name in an impromptu outburst during his State of the Union address, and even then cared so little about the murdered 22-year-old that he called her Lincoln, but then he went and apologized for accurately describing the illegal alien murder suspect as illegal. There's a screw loose in the president's moral compass, if he has one at all, Ms. Divine writes. Riley, a nursing student, was jogging on the University of Georgia campus when she was abducted and bashed to death by illegal alien Jose Ibarra, who never would have been here if the president hadn't flung open the border the first day he took office, she writes. You'd think Biden would feel some guilt about his seminal role in Riley's death and accord her at least the honors he did George Floyd, whom he eulogized as a saint. An apology, perhaps, and a vow to stop more psychopaths flooding across the border, she writes. Her family and traumatized fellow students deserve no less. But no, he ignored Riley's grieving parents, butchered their daughter's name twice, and then pandered with great empathy to the 8 million-plus lawbreakers he has ushered into the country. Biden told MSNBC's Jonathan Capehart over the weekend, and I'm adding this part now, this is outside of Ms. Divine's column, but in this interview on MSNBC. He said, I'm not going to treat any, he stuttered a bit there, of these people with disrespect. Then he had the nerve to say they built this country, and he apologized for using the word illegal. Here's the exchange with Joe Biden and Jonathan Capehart.
I noticed the look of surprise on your face when you walked into the chamber and you saw Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. It was priceless. You feigned shock at seeing her. But during your response to her heckling of you, you used the word illegal when talking about the man who allegedly killed Laken Riley.
An undocumented person. And I shouldn't have used illegal. It's undocumented. And look, when I spoke about the difference between Trump and me, one of the things I talked about on the border was that the way he talks about vermin, the way he talks about these people polluting the blood. I talked about what I'm not going to do, what I won't do. I'm not going to treat any of these people with disrespect. Look, they built the country. The reason our economy is growing. We have to control the border and more orderly flow, but I don't share his view at all.
So you regret using that word?
Yes.
Yes, he regrets calling an illegal. Miranda Divine continues her column saying, most of us were brought up understanding that people who break the law are unworthy of respect. And last time I looked, it was Americans who built this country, not scum like Ibarra who break their way into this country to create mayhem. That was one hell of a speech you gave Thursday night, was how Capehart began the interview in the usual MSNBC style. His first question was gently to chide the president for using the term illegal, not for the insult of getting Riley's name wrong or the outrage of allowing her killer into the country. She writes, Capehart cared so little that he got her name wrong too. At some point, you have to see it as deliberate. And if you listen closely, Capehart did call her Lincoln just as the president had misstated her name earlier. And that's when Biden, as you heard, jumped in saying an undocumented person. I shouldn't have used illegal. It's undocumented, he said, before launching into his favorite pastime of bashing Trump. He said, and look, when I spoke about the difference between Trump and me, one of the things I talked about in the border was the way he talks about vermin, the way he talks about these people polluting the blood. I talked about what I'm going to do. What I won't do, I'm not going to treat any of these people with disrespect. Disrespect. The President of the United States is concerned about treating this man who murdered this young lady in Georgia with disrespect. That's what he's concerned about. She goes on to write, what Donald Trump does not do is treat the family of a murder victim with disrespect. The former president met with Riley's family in Georgia Saturday night and expressed his condolences. Trump said in a rally in Rome, Georgia, I met her beautiful mother and family backstage. They said she was going to be the best nurse. She was the best nursing student. She was always the best. She was the brightest light in every room, they told me, he said. Biden's callous lack of empathy again has handed Trump an effortless way to burnish his populist credentials and show voters he cares about them. Miranda Divine writes, it was the same after a train derailment spilled toxic chemicals that sickened residents of East Palestine, Ohio. Biden's studious indifference allowed Trump to ride into town with fresh water and concerned words 2 weeks after the disaster. Biden didn't visit for over a year. His people said he was too busy, but he is never too busy for long weekends and luxury vacations. Biden likes to emote about his own tragedies every chance he gets, and that has been misinterpreted as empathy. It's not empathy, but narcissism. If he had a shred of empathy, he would unwind his open borders executive orders of January and February 2021 and stop lying that it's the Republicans' responsibility. She writes, Ibarra 26 was a classic example of Biden's border madness. Despite being listed in the Department of Homeland Security documents as an active member of the deadly Tren de Aragua gang, as the Post reported, he was set free almost immediately after crossing the border illegally in September 2022. He was then put on a bus to New York, where he got free room and board in a migrant shelter. He reportedly also worked for DoorDash and Uber Eats with entry to the apartments of unsuspecting New Yorkers to deliver food, a disgrace for which companies should be hauled over the coals. He expressed his gratitude for America's generosity by continuing to break our laws, leading to multiple arrests in New York and Georgia, but no detention or deportation. Yet when this menace finally was arrested in February in Athens, Georgia, for Miss Riley's murder, the media bent over backwards to hide the fact that he was an illegal alien. CNN lied to protect a depraved murder suspect, describing Ibarra as being of Athens. No, he was of Venezuela and should have been nowhere near Athens but for Joe Biden. His charming brother, Diego Ibarra, 29, also of Venezuela, is another illegal migrant gangbanger with a rap sheet stuffed full of offenses for drunken driving, unlicensed driving, shoplifting, and using a counterfeit green card. As Trump once said, they're not sending their best. Ms. Divine kind of wraps up her column saying Biden had his own anemic little rally Saturday in Georgia where he tried to assert moral superiority over Trump. Wrong place, wrong time, wrong message. Trump and I have a very different value set, if it isn't obvious already, said Adderall Joe, still hyper after his frenetic State of the Union performance. Mine is based on core values that have defined America: decency, honesty, fairness, and equality. And Joe Biden can stand there and say that with a straight face. Ms. Divine says Biden's entire presidency has been about indecency, topless trannies and cocaine at the White House, dishonesty, I know nothing about my son's overseas business dealings, unfairness, lawfare against political opponents, and inequality, 8 million illegals to steal your jobs and dilute your vote. What the last 3 years have taught us is that there's nothing about Joe Biden that represents decency, honesty, fairness, or equality. If character is on the ballot, he's done for, she says. 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Glad to have you in on this edition of Just the Truth. Your comments are welcome on the Furman Ford text line. Voicemails are welcome, as are your emails, joey@joeyhudson.com. Love to get your feedback on Miranda Divine's column in the New York Post, and for Joe Biden apologizing for calling an illegal an illegal. It just kind of shows you that Joe Biden is not calling the shots, doesn't it? Because he said that in his speech, and that was an off-the-cuff remark. So it kind of leads you to think that maybe, just maybe, Joe Biden does think they're illegals, but his handlers are correcting him now. He got scolded. Somebody within his administration slapped his hands and said, Joe, you shouldn't call them illegals. They're undocumented. And he had to come back out and correct himself. You think that could be the case? 864-477-5639. The January 6th Congressional Committee allegedly falsely claimed it did not have evidence that showed former President Trump's administration had actually requested National Guard assistance, according to a report detailing a hidden transcript that has now been released in reference to January the 6th. I've got the details here in just a moment. First, let me talk with you about your health, about that excess weight that you're carrying around your waist. I know it's kind of a personal topic. But hey, I've shared with you my journey over the past 3.5 years now and how I had success with PhD weight loss and nutrition. I started the program after I was introduced to Dr. Ashley Lucas and her great team in the Greenville office. I lost 30 pounds pretty quickly, and I've been able to maintain that for over 3 years now. If you're listening today and you're still on the fence, I just have one thing to say to you. PhD works. It just works, and it'll work for you for the rest of your life. If you've been considering the program and you haven't made that call yet, let me encourage you to call and set up your first consultation. 864-252-4925. 864-252-4925. Call today and get started to become a healthier you. You can lose that weight and you can keep it all for the rest of your life, because that's what the program is all about. They teach you about your relationship with food, what to eat, when to eat, and how to eat. PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition, the official partner of the Clemson Tigers. So new information is out on the January 6th Select Committee and what they actually released to us and what they did not release to us. Georgia Republican Representative Barry Loudermilk said in a statement that was released late Friday afternoon, the former J6 Select Committee apparently withheld Mr. Ornato's critical witness testimony from the American people because it contradicted their predetermined narrative. Mr. Ornato's testimony proves what Mr. Meadows, referring to Mark Meadows, has said all along. President Trump did, in fact, offer 10,000 National Guard troops to secure the U.S. Capitol, which was turned down by local officials. Loudermilk released the transcript of former White House Deputy Chief of Staff Anthony Ornato's interview with the congressional committee that's investigating January the 6th on Friday. This following the Federalist Molly Hemingway, who wrote a column, she's also a Fox News contributor, reporting that former Representative Liz Cheney's January 6th committee suppressed evidence, surprise, 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 that the Trump administration pushed for 10,000 National Guard members to be on the streets that day. Ornato's interview was conducted in January of 2022 and attended by Ms. Cheney, among other members of the committee. In addition to serving as Deputy Chief of Staff under Trump, Mr. Ornato served in the Secret Service for decades, so he knew a good bit about how to protect the Capitol. The committee, which, as you know, included 7 Democrats and now 2 former so-called Republican members of Congress, Ms. Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, concluded that it found no evidence that the Trump administration had called for 10,000 National Guard members to Washington, D.C. to protect the Capitol that day. Now, President Trump has long claimed that he requested the National Guard, but that then House Speaker Nancy Pelosi failed to act on the request. Amid and following the Congressional Committee's investigation, media outlets like the Washington Post has supposedly, quote, debunked Trump's comments, repeatedly awarding him 4 Pinocchios. Loudermilk on Friday released a transcript of Mr. Ornato's interview with the J6 committee that details how he allegedly overheard then White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows asking Washington, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser to request as much protection for D.C. as she needed. The staffer said that he heard in the committee, when it comes to the National Guard statement about having 10,000 troops or any other number of troops, do you recall any discussion prior to the 6th about whether and how many National Guard troops to deploy on January the 6th? Ornato responded, according to the transcript, I remember he was on the phone with Bowser. I walked in for something, and I was there. And he was on the phone with her and wanted to make sure she had everything that she needed, because I think it was the concern of anti and pro groups clashing is what I recall. And not anywhere near the Capitol. This was just out of the mall area or at the event, and wanted to know if she needed any more guardsmen. Now, again, he's describing a conversation between the Trump administration and the mayor of D.C.'s office. Ornato went on to cite the 10,000 guardsmen number, according to the transcript, arguing that Trump wanted to make sure you have enough. Bowser ultimately asked for just 300 National Guard members, requesting that they not be armed and only work to assist local police. Ornato said in his interview with the committee that after Bowser refused additional National Guard members, the White House requested the Defense Department have a, quote, quick reaction force on hand. Now, Cheney spokesperson Jeremy Adler yesterday, after reading the Federalist report, said that it's flatly false. In their statement, Adler said, the Federalist report is flatly false. No transcripts were destroyed, and as this letter, which has long been public, describes in detail, the committee adhered to its obligations to allow the Secret Service to protect sensitive security information for interviews of its agents before preserving that testimony in the archives. Also, he wrote, relevant content of the Secret Service transcripts was summarized in multiple places in the report. This is all a continuation of efforts to lie about and cover up Donald Trump's culpability for January the 6th, he said. Cheney also commented, taking to X over the weekend, referred to the report as BS while responding to a tweet posted by Mark Levin. Levin responded to Cheney on X saying, "I wrote it, moron. You're a pathetic disgrace and demagogue, and have exposed yourself for all time. Funny how you avoid public debates with your detractors, including me, coward. You should consider professional help." Getting a little out of hand on X there. Meadows was reportedly worried about the crowd size ahead of January the 6th, according to the report. And this included left-wing protesters and some on the side of the president as well. He was afraid. It appeared that Mark Meadows and others in the Trump administration were concerned that the two sides would clash. When supporters of former President Trump ultimately breached the Capitol, Ornato said in his interview that the White House called on then acting Secretary of Defense Christopher Miller to deploy assistance. Ornato said, "So then I remembered the chief saying, 'Hey, I'm calling Secretary of Defense to get that quick reaction force in here. The constant was, where is the National Guard? Where isn't, we've got to get control of this,' Ornato said." Hemingway detailed in her report that Ornato's testimony matched what the former Trump administration aide Kash Patel said during his testimony amid Colorado's failed efforts to take Trump off of the ballot over the claims of his 2024 presidential run violates the 14th Amendment. Patel said last year in his testimony, Mayor Bowser wrote a letter herself on approximately January the 4th, declining further requests for National Guard services outside of the 346 National Guardsmen already authorized. Patel went on to say the authorization came in beforehand. It was relayed to the appropriate officials in D.C. and the Capitol Police. It was declined, and we acted when their request finally came in on January the 6th. So again, multiple people testifying that yes, in fact, as Mark Meadows and others in the Trump administration, as Donald Trump himself has said many, many times, that they had offered 10,000 National Guardsmen to be in the nation's capital that day, but local officials were smarter. They knew better. Mark Hemingway, senior writer at Real Clear Investigations, also responded to Liz Cheney's tweet to Levin this weekend, saying Cheney was using disingenuous circular logic by citing Patel as not being a credible witness. Ornato said the Trump White House on January 6th continually asked, "What's taking so long? Why are they not responding?" The January 6th report detailed that then Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman General Mark Milley said that then Vice President Mike Pence had called Miller at least 2 times to request a National Guard presence, and that Meadows had allegedly called to kill the narrative that the Vice President is making all the decisions. The report states that Trump did not personally make the call. Just days before January 6, 2021, an op-ed penned by former defense secretaries, including Liz Cheney's father, Dick Cheney, argued against involving the military in election disputes. Hemingway cited a report in her piece that Liz Cheney organized the op-ed and had allegedly secretly orchestrated a pressure campaign to prevent the Defense Department from deploying resources on January the 6th. So you see, it's coming from various sources from all directions that people did not want. It's almost like they were hoping that January 6th would get out of hand, as it did. In his Friday statement and transcript release, Representative Loudermilk said the committee hid Ornato's testimony. He said in his statement, "This is just one example of important information the former select committee hid from the public because it contradicted what they wanted the American people to believe. And this is exactly why my investigation is committed to uncovering all the facts, no matter the outcome." 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Send your comments to the Furman Ford text line. Representative Nancy Mace, the Republican from the 1st Congressional District of South Carolina, picked up the endorsement of President Donald Trump and then accuses ABC's George Stephanopoulos of trying to shame her for accepting the endorsement and for offering her support of former President Trump in a very contentious interview yesterday. The whole story in just a moment. First, let me talk with you about that new vehicle that you're looking for. You're looking for a dependable new or pre-owned vehicle for your family, one that you can trust, one that you can get service for later, look no further than Furman Ford in Lawrence. It's never been more important to support locally owned businesses than now. And Furman Ford is owned and operated right there in Lawrence. The Furman name is on the sign because their name is on the line. Jim and Matthew Furman both realize that with every transaction, they're responsible for the outcome. If you want to deal with someone who's right here in the upstate and know that when you drive off the lot with that new car, that your money is staying in our community, then let me encourage you to head over to Lawrence the next time you need to purchase a vehicle. Or maybe your existing vehicle needs service and you don't want to wait 2 or 3 weeks to get it serviced. They'll service all makes and models. You do not have had to purchase your vehicle from Furman Ford. Furman Ford, find them online at furmanford.com, furmanford.com. Congresswoman Nancy Mace, who once was critical of President Donald Trump, landed his endorsement Saturday in what will probably be a big help in her run for a third term. Trump announced his endorsement on the Truth Social platform, saying Nancy Mace worked hard campaigning across South Carolina in support of our record-breaking win. Mace receiving the endorsement is a win for her as she faces a primary challenge this year in the 1st Congressional District. Most notably, Mace is being challenged by one-time candidate for governor Catherine Templeton. However, Mace and Trump, as you may recall, have not always been on the same page. In 2022, Trump endorsed former state representative Katie Arrington in the Republican primary over Miss Mace. Mace, who defeated Arrington, had the backing of former Governor Nikki Haley, who recently, of course, dropped out of the presidential race. In this year's South Carolina Republican presidential primary, Representative Mace, though, backed Trump's campaign, and she stumped for Trump all around the state. Being supportive of the former president, of course, can be key in a primary election in South Carolina as Trump maintains a very tight grip over the Republican Party base. So yesterday, on This Week on ABC, host George Stephanopoulos got some pushback from Miss Mace on how and why she would endorse Donald Trump and why she would accept his endorsement when he lost his civil trial with E. Jean Carroll on her claim that Trump raped her years ago in a New York department store. Here's the exchange. Representative Mace accused the host of trying to shame her for endorsing former President Trump in this very contentious interview yesterday on ABC.
And you've endorsed Donald Trump for president. Judges and 2 separate juries have found him liable for rape and for defaming the victim of that rape. How do you square your endorsement of Donald Trump with the testimony we just saw?
Well, I will tell you, I was raped at the age of 16. And any rape victim will tell you, I've lived for 30 years with an incredible amount of shame over being raped. I didn't come forward because of that judgment and shame that I felt. And it's a shame that you will never feel, George. And I'm not going to sit here on your show and be asked a question meant to shame me about another potential rape victim. I'm not gonna do that.
It's actually not about shaming you. It's a question about Donald Trump.
No, you are shaming me.
You've endorsed Donald Trump for president.
Right.
Donald Trump has been found liable for rape by a jury. Donald Trump has been found liable for defaming the victim of that rape by a jury. It's been affirmed by a judge.
It was not a criminal court case, number one. Number two, I live with shame. And you're asking me a question about my political choices, trying to shame me as a rape victim, and I find it disgusting. And quite frankly, E. Jean Carroll's comments when she did get the judgment, joking about what she was going to buy, it makes it harder for women to come forward when they make a mockery out of rape, when they joke about it.
Doesn't it make it harder for women to come forward when they are
It makes it harder when other women joke about it, and she's joked about it. I find it offensive. And I also find it offensive that you're trying to shame me with this question.
I'm not trying to shame you at all. In fact,
I have dealt with this for 30 years. You know how hard it was to tell my story 5 years ago when they were doing a fetal heartbeat bill and there were no exceptions for rape, incest, or rape or incest in there? I had to tell my story because no other woman was coming forward. No rape victims were represented. And you're trying to shame me this morning.
I'm just asking.
And I find it offensive, and this is why women won't come forward.
Women won't come forward because they're defamed by those who perpetrate rape. Donald Trump
They are judged and they're shamed, and you're trying to shame me this morning. I think it's disgusting.
I'm not shaming you at all. I
told my story. It took me 25 years to tell my story. I was judged for it. I still get judged for it today.
I'm asking you a very simple question.
And I answered it. You're shaming me for my political choices.
I'm asking you a question about why you endorse someone who's been found liable for rape.
It was not a criminal court. This was a
civil court.
It was a civil court. And by the way, she joked about the judgment and what she was going to do with all that money, and I find that offensive.
I'm asking you about the man
as a rape victim who's been shamed for years now because of her rape, you're trying to shame me again by asking me this political question.
You've repeated that again.
I think it's offensive. As a woman, I find it offensive. My political choices, I've endorsed the man that I believe is best for our country. It's not Joe Biden. And you looked at the dueling rallies yesterday in Georgia. Laken Riley's family was with Donald Trump. They weren't with Joe Biden. The same guy yesterday that apologized for calling her killer an illegal, who wasn't illegal. And here you are trying to shame a rape victim. I find it disgusting.
I mean, you keep saying I'm shaming you.
You are. The question, it is.
How is the question asking you about a presidential candidate who's
You're asking a rape victim.
And there's no question about that. And
you've
courageously talked about that.
Because I've been raped. I think that's disgusting.
No, I'm questioning your political choices because you're supporting someone who's been found liable for rape. Actually, I'm not trying to shame you.
You are. That's exactly
what you're doing. You're not answering the question.
And I think it's disgusting.
Now, this went on for another 7 or 8 minutes. Representative Mace is referencing, of course, E. Jean Carroll, who, after this rogue judge in New York found in her favor, appeared on the Rachel Maddow show and joked about the money that she got, joking to Maddow saying, "Yes, Rachel, yes, I had such great ideas for all the good I'm going to do with this money." She said, "First thing, Rachel, you and I are going to go shopping. We're going to get complete new wardrobes, new shoes, motorcycle for Carroll's attorney, Sean Crowley, a new fishing rod for Robbie Carroll's attorney, Roberta Kaplan. Rachel, what do you want? A penthouse? It's yours. Rachel, penthouse, France? You want France? You want to go fishing to France? No?" I mean, she's joking about the fact that this rogue judge has found in her favor for like $83 million. And you may remember, too, that just last week, the same judge has said that Donald Trump has to either pay the money by today's the deadline, or put up some type of bond. It'll be interesting to see just what the Trump organization does. He, of course, intends to appeal the decision further. A federal jury in New York City decided last year that Trump was not liable for rape, but was liable for sexual abuse and defamation. On the Furman Ford text line, Faye writes, "Joey, I hope all those turning out for Trump rallies are planning to actually vote. The more that is revealed about this regime, the more I realize they are to be feared. But still, we have living among us those who can't see what is lurking around the next corner. Without Trump as our leader, I fear our constitutional republic will be in the rearview mirror. There's nothing too low for these degenerates to do. It is past time we pray day and night." And Faye, that's the key. We do. We have to pray for this election. Peg and I pray every night that the American people will choose the right leaders. Jeff asked on the Furman Ford text line, "Have you heard anything about the med beds that they have, that they're starting to let some out to the public? I think that's what Biden sleeps in. He changes too much from day to the next." Jeff, I don't know what the med bed is. Send me another text or email me, joey@joeyhudson.com, what you mean by med beds. I haven't heard about this, but would be very curious to know what you're talking about. Paul says, "Years ago, last century, I was trained to recognize aberrant behaviors in my employees and drug use. Thursday night, we witnessed with many close-ups from the TV that the old man speaking was shaking, possibly from drugs," he said. Franklin says, "Joey, in reference to the State of the Union, I heard the angry old man. The fact is, this is even happening is scary. The Dems are really trying hard to stop Donald Trump from getting elected. We have to ask ourselves why. He is pro-America. He did a great job for 4 years in office. This is scary times." That's right, Franklin. Appreciate your comment. Jennifer says, "Hey, Joey, you asked for feedback, so here it comes." I'm with your buddy Carson and everybody else who thinks that serious training goes along with gun ownership. Now, Jennifer is responding to the question of, as you may have heard, last week, Governor Henry McMaster signed into law constitutional carry. You no longer have to have a concealed weapons permit to carry a gun. There is going to be free training that's available from SLED twice a month, and they're working on the details of that now. Jennifer says, I'm a big proponent of the Second Amendment, but I won't carry without training because I shouldn't. My husband carries, and he's super trained and experienced, and that's part of our security. An 18-year-old with a gun and no training? ? I can't think of anything crazier. What could possibly go wrong? You carry, you train. Then I'm for it. This is not the wild, wild west. And by the way, my gun-toting husband, once again, trained and experienced, totally agrees with me. Appreciate that, Jennifer. Christy says, I also would like to know who decided that Katie Britt was the best choice for the rebuttal. It was painful to watch that as well. I think the conservatives dropped the ball on that big time. She was very scripted and was from one fake emotion to another. If this is the best they have to offer after that State of the Union address, we are in trouble. Christy, you're right. It was embarrassing, wasn't it? I was embarrassed for Katie Britt. She was trying way too hard. 864-477-JOEY. Your comments are welcome on the Furman Ford text line. Our text of encouragement from Joel: character cannot be developed in ease and quiet. Only through experience of trial and suffering can the soul be strengthened, ambition inspired, and success achieved. God bless. Thank you, Joel. Black New Yorkers have conflicting ideas over who deserves reparations, as a commission will soon begin to discuss the issue, how much money to give out, and who receives it. Details on that in just a moment. Let me talk with you about your refrigerator or your dishwasher or maybe your stove, washer and dryer, that microwave. Are you tired of buying appliances from inexperienced salespeople from the big box stores who the only thing they know about an appliance is that it's on aisle 39? With so many different options, brands, features, it's kind of hard to figure out which one's right, isn't it? And appliances are expensive, so you can't afford to make the wrong decision. That's why you need to be shopping with Discounted Appliance Warehouse. And that's why when I need an appliance, that's who I call first. Discounted Appliance Warehouse in Pickens. They have an A+ Better Business Bureau rating, nearly perfect reviews on Google, and the team at Discounted Appliance Warehouse, they have the knowledge that you need to have confidence in your purchase. They'll show you around the warehouse. It's about 11,000 square feet. At any given time, they have about 1,500 appliances waiting for you. They have an award-winning service department, extended warranties, and they have you covered well beyond the sale. I know this because I've experienced it firsthand. Discounted Appliance Warehouse. It's worth the short drive to Pickens. Find them online at dawpickens.com, dawpickens.com. So this nonsense about reparations is being discussed in New York again, as in December, New York Governor Kathy Hochul signed a bill that established a commission to research the best ways to offer reparations to descendants of slaves in the state. By last month, she announced that members who would make up the commission had started to work on how this would be implemented. Now, the commission has yet to meet, we're told, but some black residents have already expressed their concerns that it would be limited only to direct descendants of slaves, similar to what California's Reparations Commission announced after their studying the issue. Bertha Lewis is head of the Brooklyn-based Black Institute. She told the New York Post, "That's a false narrative. I don't give a F what California did." She continued, "You can't just say only descendants of slaves from the South. Black people face the effects of slavery, discrimination, simply because they're black." Lewis also emphasized that it could be difficult to pinpoint direct descendants of slaves, claiming that all black people have since been affected. So this is one of those clear examples of you give someone an inch, they take 3 feet, and that's exactly what we're going to hear. And that's why the whole reparations debate should have never been started. That's why these states like New York and California, the governors, they didn't have the backbone to stand up and say, we're not going to pay reparations. Instead, they're leading these people on, making them think that this is something that's being considered. They're forming the commissions and the committees to investigate it. They're not going to pay reparations. They can't afford to. And especially if some of these groups like this Bertha Lewis gets their way to where every person who has dark skin is paid something. Lewis emphasized that it could be difficult to pinpoint direct descendants of slaves. That was her quote. Well, of course it would be. She said, if you're going to talk about reparations, you have to talk about discrimination that has gone on a long time against black people in the white American system. By contrast, Little African News founder Mona Davids, a black South African, argued that black citizens who willingly immigrated to New York should not receive reparations since it was, quote, our choice to come here. Davids told the New York Post the only beneficiaries of reparations should be descendants of chattel slavery, not African immigrants or Afro-Caribbean descendants. She added descendants of slaves didn't have a choice. White people benefited from slavery. Davids also called out African countries, pointing out that some of their rulers had previously profited from slavery as well. She said, in many cases, it was black Africans who sold slaves. Ghana is rich. Nigeria is rich. Governor Hochul did not elaborate whether reparations included all black citizens or only descendants of slaves. However, she argued that even descendants of immigrants who arrived after the end of slavery could be culpable in paying reparations. She said, I think of the immigrants and the children of immigrants who've come here since the end of slavery. They will say, we had no involvement in slavery. None of our relatives were slave owners. And there's part of me that worries about leaping into this conversation because of the racial divisions, strife it could sow. Well, Governor, you should have thought about that before you appointed the commission, before you allowed them to bully you into the idea of even thinking about it. You have encouraged them with the idea that it might be possible to do this. The governor continued, these huddles and tired masses came here to seek a better life. Slaves, people who were enslaved, didn't come here willingly to pursue a dream, but they came in bondage to live a nightmare. And we have to ask, do those of us whose family came here to pursue a dream not have a role in playing, do not have a role to play in ending this nightmare? Yes, we do, she said. And again, this whole discussion of why the idea of paying reparations is a joke. This is another example of people wanting something for nothing. It's bad enough to think about paying anything, even to direct descendants. But now, as we see, according to this black activist group, that's not good enough. They want anybody who's black to be paid something. 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Keep your comments coming via the Furman Ford text line. That's it for today's Just the Truth. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition Studio. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. And if you haven't joined our mailing list, visit my website, joeyhudson.com. Click on the Connect with Joey button so that you can receive our emails with the most up-to-date news. Find me on YouTube as well. Just search for Joey Hudson. I posted a little short video yesterday. I might have something for the first person to text me or email me what I talked about on my little short video on YouTube yesterday. Just to see if you're paying attention, see if you're watching and listening. Keep those comments coming, your voice messages as well. 864-477-JOEY. We're back tomorrow. Until then, remember, God's got this. He's still in control.